Hey everyone, it's Patrick with the AuDHD Journeys on another long form video on the There and Back Again series that we're doing. And this one is all about autistic burnout. And if you've been following any sort of my content, Instagram, Facebook, some Substack posts, etc., podcasts on Divergent Conversations, or all things private practice, you know that I have been a major AuDHD burnout for at least 18 months of my life, maybe more. It's hard to say. Figuring out that I was autistic and ADHD later in life and doing all the unmasking and coming to like these realization, aha, epiphany moments, like it's very possible I experienced burnout before that. But I was masking so hard that I was either dissociating or I was not really aware of some of the struggles that I experienced. I was suppressing a lot of my autistic and ADHD traits. I was overcompensating in a lot of ways, and I was definitely not present or aware of what was happening in my nervous system and my body and my brain. And so here we are, fast forwarding till now. I'm a therapist turned entrepreneur who has multiple businesses and has done a laundry list of creative projects over the last 6 years. And I blame a lot of the success that I've had on the burnout that I'm in, because early on, before knowing that I was autistic, a lot of these successes were really exciting. There was a lot of dopamine involved in early success in my businesses. There was a lot of connection and creativity and really feeling inspired and honestly chasing a lot of shiny objects and all of the things and all of the directions, having to rein it in over and over and over again. And as I learned that I was autistic back in 2021, having to restructure and reorganize my businesses in a way that worked a little bit better for me. But the problem for me and for a lot of those who have discovered their autism later in life, especially if you're an entrepreneur, is that if you're already in the thick of it, of the creation process, if you're already in the thick of this like runaway train that you've created, it is really hard to rein it back in without shutting it all down. And because we live in a fucking capitalist hellscape, it is really hard to shut it all down. We still have bills to pay. We still have to live our lives and look forward to things. We need to eat. We, if you're like me, may have a complexity of different medical conditions that require endless amounts of specialist appointments and medications and all sorts of doctor's visits and outside the box thinking and modalities, and it's expensive and it fucking adds up. So it's hard to just say when we really probably need to shut everything down to realistically do so. And I just started with a new therapist about 2 months ago. And the first thing she asked me after I told her the state that I was in and listed all the things that I had accomplished and created over the last 6 years, she was like, has any of it brought you joy? And if not, was it worth it? And I had to really pause on that and think about it. And some of it did bring me joy early on. The coaching programs and the retreats and the podcasts and the speaking engagements and the group practice and everything else. Yeah, there was joy at first. But if I say that truthfully now, I mean, I would be lying. And it's not that I can't find joy in the connections that I've made along the way, but it's just that I don't have it in me anymore. I feel like a husk of a human, a shell, so to speak. I feel like I have nothing left and that I am just constantly trying to pull from reserves that I don't have. And I always think about like video game life force bars up above, you know, when you're in like, I don't know, Mortal Kombat, for example. I feel like I'm constantly in the like rocking back and forth, finish 'em stage where you are just defeated and there's no coming back. And it's really challenging as someone who's more of a high achieving personality type, because we do live again in capitalism and grind and hustle culture are rewarded. And if you step away, you're deemed like lazy or unmotivated, or you start to fall into comparison traps, or maybe you question your entire sense of self and your identity is wrapped up in what you do. And you all of a sudden have these aha epiphany moments of like, this is not for me anymore. This is not serving me. And that's the answer to my therapist's question was like, you've done all of this and you've destroyed yourself. And it hasn't changed the way you feel about yourself. Because I've always been really, really critical of myself. And I am really hard on myself. There's a lot of internal criticism that happens on like a loop. Some of it might be OCD, like moral scrupulosity. Am I a good person? Am I good? Am I worthy? Some of it is childhood wounding. Some of it is not being told as a child that my parents were proud of me or that they loved me. And always trying to prove my worth. And I think some of it, subconsciously and unknowingly, was trying to prove, not only to myself, but the people around me, that I could do the thing, whatever the thing was. And that was before knowing I was autistic ADHD, but just trying to prove that. And then after the fact, I think some of that was tied to internalized ableism of like, I've got to prove that I am capable and competent and able. And here we are. Fast forward to February 19th, 2026. I don't know when this will release, but present moment in time, I'm getting ready to go co-host 2 separate 7-night retreats in New Zealand and stay there for 30 days. And for those of you who don't know, a large portion of my career over the last 6 years has been hosting retreats and summits all over the world for mental health professionals and mental health business owners and other entrepreneurs. And it was at first really wonderful. My first one was in Ireland in March of 2022 during St. Patrick's Day, right after COVID started opening the world back up. And the reality was that was so exciting. The challenge of figuring out how to do a retreat, having never done one, booking a venue, finding the right spot, doing all the recon and research, which I love, honestly. It's like my favorite part of trip planning and traveling. Connecting with the vendors. I love supporting small businesses. I love finding off the beaten path locations. As you can see, the Bourdain painting behind me. Idol, for sure. Special interest, for sure. And once that happened, my career just took a very different trajectory. And since that retreat in Ireland, I have hosted 20 different events over the last 5 years in 9 different countries and different parts of the United States. And for a long time, 23, 24, and 2025, I was in and out of the country almost every other month for at least 10 to 14 days. Some of that getting acclimated, some of that transitioning and traveling, and some of that hosting these events, some of it doing recon for these events. And as these events piled up and successes piled up and demands increased and my career took off in all these different directions between like the 2 podcasts, All Things Private Practice, Divergent Conversations, TEDx talk, book deal, coaching programs, speaking opportunity. Like it just didn't stop. And a lot of you may be thinking like, that sounds really great. Like what a dream scenario and dream life. And I often feel a lot of guilt and shame about saying that I've created a dream life scenario that I can't actively participate in. Like my dream job is one that I cannot actively participate in. And I had that recollection in January of 2023. I had just had a second throat surgery, hence the water, because my throat always needs lubrication because one of my vocal cords got paralyzed along the way. Because, you know, I've got a rare throat condition called Zenger's diverticulum that impacts 0.001% of the population and only people over 65. The doctor told me, you're one of the lucky ones. So after my second surgery, I came back way too quickly. I wanted to get back into work. I was restless. I was really overwhelmed being at home. I don't do like being a patient well or being sick well or recovering well because although my body always feels run down and depleted and injured or whatever, my brain never stops, and it's relentless, and it's always feeling understimulated. And the ADHD side of me really wants novelty and stimulation and new experiences and excitement, because boredom is like the key to depression, and it fears it more than anything, is boredom or the mundaneness of life. So I came back way too early, and I remember realizing in that moment, recovering from medical trauma, having a paralyzed vocal cord, having learned that I was autistic a year and a half beforehand, still trying to figure out what that meant to me. And I just wasn't prepared for the level of sensory overwhelm that I experienced, and the social struggles and the burnout that I must have been in, because I started melting down in the retreat that I was co-hosting in New Orleans in a group of our attendees, and I had to step outside, and I just screamed at the top of my lungs, having a massive meltdown, thinking like so much grief and sadness over ability and disability, and acknowledging and coming to terms with where you are at with your capacity. And it was really fucking sad. And that was a first moment for me where I started to think about how I have to phase out a lot of my life, but I didn't do it. 2023, I wasn't ready to do it. That was a very busy year. I had 6 more retreats that year. I spent 30 days in Europe doing recon in Italy, Greece, Spain, and Portugal, which again, a lot of you are like, dream job. Sounds amazing. Stop complaining. And it all just takes a toll, just transitioning from environment to environment, not being able to sleep, because I don't sleep well anyway, as so many of us neurodivergent humans do not. Struggling with the bed, struggling with the pillow, struggling with the temperature. The blackout curtains don't black out the light, a bed that's not comfortable, hearing noise outside, all the unfamiliarity, all the new environments started to take a toll. All of the other projects being created simultaneously started to take a toll. All of the time away from home for my wife and my family and my dogs started to take a toll on me. And it's weird, because I think the autistic side of me was so ready to be home and just like hibernation mode, in the dark, laying on my couch, watching my special interest shows or Lord of the Rings for the millionth time. And my ADHD was not ready to let go. That's how it felt to me. It felt like this constant tug of war that ADHD always won, no matter what kind of boundaries and accountability measures that I tried to put in place. It just never worked. It never mattered. Autism's waving the white flag desperately. And so that was a rough year. We go into 2024, and I had this vision. I found this medieval Italian village that you could rent the entire village. And it had a 17th century Baroque style theater and all of the accommodations in this little village on this hilltop, with like a wine bar and a couple of restaurants and a beautiful palazzo and courtyard. And I got the idea, like, I could host my first Doubt Yourself, Do It Anyway summit here, and we could rent the entire village, bring 100 mental health therapists here, 12 speakers. It could be this prolific event. It's like once in a lifetime. And I made it happen. It actually came to fruition. And I will make a video about that process, because the executive functioning and the over accommodation and how I did that, I had a good co-host who is much more like spreadsheet, certainly helpful. I'm much more of the visionary, but I brought that to life. And during that year, I had 6 other retreats and coaching programs and podcast responsibilities because of sponsorships that were in place. And it really didn't feel like I could step away in a way that felt like it wasn't possible. So in my mind, I kept saying, okay, you've just got to get to Italy in September. You see that event through, and then you're done for the year. And I was planning on taking myself on a 2-week Lord of the Rings tour in New Zealand just to decompress from it all. That was going to be my reprieve, and it was going to be a nice special interest gift for myself. I'd been planning it for 3 years. Italy was very overwhelming. It was fucking hot every day. We're in this old medieval town that has no air conditioning, obviously, hardly any ventilation. The event was wonderful, but it was so challenging for me. I had to constantly remove myself, as I so often do now, from my events and environments because I was so overwhelmed. I skipped dinner several nights just to lay in the darkness of my room. It felt like every nerve cell in my body was just throbbing, pulsating, being shocked constantly. So once that came to an end, I was like, okay, I've done it. Finish line. I get to rest. And then I don't know if any of you know what happened to Asheville at the end of September in 2024, but we got pummeled by Hurricane Helene and forever changed Western North Carolina. The community itself, the landscape, the topography, the livelihoods, the businesses, everything was shaken to its core. And I obviously was not going to go to New Zealand and go frolicking through the meadows and the woods, pretending to be Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings, while my wife and our 2 dogs navigated this once in 2,000 year ecological catastrophe is what they called it. So that was obviously something that created such nervous system dysregulation, not just for myself, but the community at large, and so many people who lost their homes, their businesses, their jobs, their lives. We didn't have cell service or internet for weeks. We couldn't even find out what was going on. We couldn't tell people we were alive. It was horrifying, honestly. It felt apocalyptic. And so that prolongs burnout, right? My plan to finally have this reprieve is instantly taken away from me. And there's sadness in that. Like, there's survivor's guilt living through a catastrophe. But then I was having guilt about feeling sad that I also couldn't go on this Lord of the Rings trip in New Zealand that I had been planning for 2.5 years and looking forward to as this like end point in my career for the year, and a relief. And it just was a mess. Then we go right into 2025, and I had made all these concessions with my therapist. I will only say yes to opportunities in odd-numbered months. I have 6 retreats. They're all in odd-numbered months. That's what I'm going to do. Even-numbered months, recovery only, no other obligations, no other demands. What ends up happening is I immediately get asked to do a TED Talk in February, an even-numbered month. I can't say no to this opportunity. I'm like, this feels like I need to do this, and I do. And the stress of preparing plus doing it, and y'all should all go watch it. Patrick.Casale, TEDx, Manitou Springs, Colorado, late in life autism discovery. It's quite good. I fucked up on stage. I admitted that to the crowd because I lost the line. Everyone started clapping. I was like, this is amazing. It was really cool. It was really a cool experience, and I'm not mad that I did it. But it did throw me off because I went from hosting a retreat in January with a friend in Belize, TEDx in February. March, I hosted my final retreat in Ireland after doing that one 5 years in a row. Lots of grief and sadness wrapped up in that. But I knew in my soul that I could not say yes to doing another in 2026 because I was so done and so burnt out. And when I did not immediately ask the venue hostess to book the dates for the next year like I had done the previous 4 years, I knew something was really shifting. Then in April, I went to New Zealand to do recon for these events that I'm about to host. May, I did a retreat in Spain. June, I had a break. July, I hosted a 125-person summit in Edinburgh, Scotland. It was fucking hot as hell. It was overwhelming. It was so busy. I had to constantly leave the venue to go back to my rental and just lay in the darkness. I had to skip events. I had to skip meals. I had to skip tours. I just couldn't do it. I actually removed myself from Edinburgh a few days before the summit started because I was so overstimulated and overwhelmed in the city with how busy and hot it was that I found a farm in southern Scotland and went there for 2 days because I wanted to go somewhere around a bunch of Highland cattle. I really wanted to go spend time with them. I love animals, but I just needed to get away from it all and regulate my nervous system before our guests started to arrive. And those are the types of moments that started to increase and intensify over the last couple of years where I've had to just pull myself out of situations and do drastic things to try hard to reset for a couple of days to get through the next thing. Then August comes. I don't think I had anything planned in that month. I went to Portland, Maine during the week of my birthday to do recon for a summit that I'll be hosting this year in September. And so I went with my business partner and co-host for a couple of days. We made this reservation at this fancy restaurant that I really have been craving going to for years in Portland. Had never been there before. We walked in. The environment was not for me. It was just so small, so loud, so packed. And I immediately started shutting down. And my friend Jen was like, we can leave. It's okay. Like, we can go. So she ended up taking herself to dinner somewhere else. I went home on the night of my birthday dinner, laid in my bed in the dark, and I just laid there. I couldn't do anything else. And I started to notice my nervous system needed more of that and more of that. And it was becoming more and more intense. I was getting sick more often. I was getting injured more often. I was in stress mode and activation more often. And so then September comes, and we were supposed to be co-hosting a retreat in Greece, followed by one in Spain a couple of days later. My thought was like, why come back to the States and then come back to Europe to do the Spain event? Let's just do it back to back and power through, and then my year will be done. Notice a recurring theme here. I always do this mental gymnastic thing of like, once you get through these demands, life will no longer have demands. It's never proven to be true, no matter how hard I've tried. So we go to Greece. It's 95 degrees every day. I am in sensory meltdown every second of every day that I'm not in the air conditioning or in the shade. I skip almost every single workshop at the event. Thankfully, my co-host handled all of it. I skipped almost every single social situation. I ended up tearing ligaments in my ankle while walking because I was just so dysregulated that I wasn't paying attention. I end up going to an urgent care in Greece. They put me in an ankle brace. I tell them that I'm going to Spain 2 days later to host another retreat. They advise me not to do that and to go home. I do not listen to them. And I end up going to Spain with my friends and my co-host to get ready to host this next event. I immediately get sick, super sick, like flu/COVID sick, and end up having to come back to the United States, masked up, all the precautions. I did not step foot on that retreat ground at all for that event. So the people who had been waiting 18 months to come, I never got to hang out with them or spend time with them. I apologized to them all in a group WhatsApp chat that we were in, and that brought up a lot of guilt and shame. But I also felt proud of myself for just not trying to power through feeling absolutely awful in a foreign country. Came home for a month, laid on my couch or my bed, recovered to go on my first vacation of the year with my wife to Spain. I immediately get sick halfway through. When we come home, I end up in the hospital, and the rest is history. And since that time, things have deteriorated even more rapidly and intensely. I've had to cut out an alarming amount out of my life. As a business owner, it's not an easy task. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I have shrunk my life quite a bit. I've had to say no to opportunities and collaborations and partnerships and all sorts of things that used to bring me joy. I just cannot take on another demand. And sometimes people don't understand why I'm so rigid about it. They're like, it's not until April or May. And I'm like, nope, I can't do it. I cannot put anything else in here. Like, it just cannot happen. So that's been a long journey to get here. And so fast forwarding to present day, getting ready to host these two events in New Zealand, I already know going in, like, this is going to destroy me, but I can't bail because people have been waiting 2.5 years to fly halfway around the world. And I'm going to show up as my real authentic self and name the fact that I am in major burnout, and I'm going to step away often and remove myself as much as I can and sensory soothe all of the time. And that will not be enough. And that's the fucked up thing about all this, is like all of the measures you start trying to put in place are not enough. And that feels really demoralizing when you start canceling on plans, when you start pulling out of obligations, when you start flaking on friends, when you start shutting your world down, and it still does not feel like enough because you're in such bad burnout from all of the years of pushing yourself beyond your limits and capacity that you start to pay the price. And it's not an easy fix. There are no short-term solutions for autistic burnout. It is not like regular general workplace burnout where a quick vacation or a 3-day or a 4-day weekend or a spa day might cure, the malaise or the struggle at work or feeling like you're not satisfied or not feeling good in that job. This is so different. And it's so hard. And I got signed to write a book on late in life autism discovery that's supposed to get published March of 2027. But the manuscript was supposed to be due this summer. And I've been writing it. But like, I'm so burnt out that I had to ask my agent to talk with the editor and publisher about, can we push to March of 2028? And that was such a hard conversation for me to have. But the reality is, like, if I want to write this book in a lens of feeling connected to the project and having it be the book that I want it to be, not just for myself, but for all of you, I need a different lens, and it needs to be one from a place of restoration and from healing. And that was my realization, that it's okay to ask for these accommodations. You never know if people are going to say yes or no to these requests in your life. But I've had to start doing that more and more as I've become increasingly more burnt out. And it seems promising that that is what will happen. So I'm crossing my fingers on that. We'll see. But I've also had to make peace with, like, if they say no, I have to be okay with that too. And what I decided to do was, when I come back from New Zealand, I'm going to Ireland at the end of April for a retreat that someone's hosting called Neurodivergent by Nature. I signed up as a participant for the first time in my life. Pretty nervous about that because I'm really used to having a role and responsibility to be social. So I figured that would be a good place for me to start my burnout recovery journey. I love Ireland. I have heritage there. I feel very connected to the land, to the scenery, to the landscape, to the people. I've been there 11 times, so I'm familiar with it. I feel comfortable there. I like the weather there because I don't like being hot. And what I decided to do, and because I couldn't find it myself, was to start building a burnout recovery program for myself. And when I posted this publicly, people thought I meant I was building it for others, like a retreat type of situation. And when I was talking about my burnout last week, I had 6 different people reach out to me asking me if I knew of a place where they could go for autistic burnout long-term recovery. And I was like, fuck, there is such a need for this. I don't have the spoons. I mean, I think if I had known this 5 years ago, maybe I could have done a lot of creation work for this, or a lot of the legwork. So what I decided to do is talk with my wife, talk with my therapist, who has been encouraging me to take 60 to 90 days off, which feels still extreme in my brain, but it might come to that, is because we need these hard resets. This is not something that I'm going to solve in a month in Ireland. It's not something that I'm going to solve in 3 months, but it's a starting point, and it's getting into that mindset of how to reduce demands and step away and truly take care of yourself and prioritize yourself and well-being. And I'm privileged enough to be able to do that in my jobs, to walk away for a month because I have a good leadership team at my group practice. And in my other business, I am the only employee. I'm the only person doing all the work. So I can step away from that as well. And I have a long queue of episodes of podcasts. So like all of my obligations are met. So really now it becomes more psychological and mindset based, right? Like I know I can step away from the jobs. They're going to continue to run. I know my wife says I can step away, and I trust her to tell me that if she was okay with it. I know I can step away from other obligations. How can I manage this on my own? I don't do well sitting with myself. I mentioned the restlessness earlier. It's intense. It's palpable. I try to run from myself, crawl out of my skin. If autism is depleted, ADHD is still understimulated. And so what I've decided to do after that retreat that I go to is extend my trip by about 3.5 weeks in Ireland. And what I've done is I have secured accommodations in a really beautiful part of the country. They're all mostly beautiful. It's unbelievable. In the middle of fucking nowhere, surrounded by nature and animals and just beautiful landscapes. Walking distance to a small village nearby in case I need human contact, want to go listen to some Irish music or whatever. And what I'm going to do is drastic measures. I'm bringing a phone lockbox with a timer, and I'm going to put my phone in it every single day because I know I can't go like all or nothing, remove myself from society, although I know that's what I probably need. But the reality is, like, I don't feel comfortable doing that right now, and that may change. And again, it is probably what I need. But I'm going to start there, and I'm going to just not put meetings into my calendar, not put any demands, not answer emails, not answer calls or messages. I'm going to like communicate with my wife once a day just to check in. But otherwise, like, that's the goal. And I've tried this before, and I just haven't been able to do it because I get too uncomfortable. And that's why I was looking for a program, because I thought if I had like the container and the structure and the accountability, but the programs are few and far between. And if they exist, whether or not they're neurodiversity affirming and autistic affirming, I have no fucking clue. And I think that's the hard part for a lot of us. And then for a lot of you, like the financial piece is a huge barrier. And I know so many of you need what I'm talking about. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sensory soothe, put in activities all day, every day to take care of my body and my sensory system, spend time in nature. I love animals, so I'm going to spend time near an animal sanctuary. I am going to just rest, read, maybe watch and binge special interest shows. And I'm going to try as hard as humanly possible to recover, because that younger version of me, my inner child who had a lot of wounding, felt really lonely, didn't have the words for his experiences, couldn't communicate what was going on to the people around him, who really struggled and suffered. He deserves that healing. And if you're listening to this still, you do too. So I just will certainly make updates here. I'll keep you all posted on how it goes. And I think a lot of us get to this point, unfortunately, where we need drastic resets. And we need to try to fight as hard as we fucking can to stay alive, because the way it feels for me is like, if things continue on, I don't foresee this lasting much longer. Not from a place of suicidality, just naming that. And no shame or judgment if that's the place that you're in. But I mean more from a physical standpoint. It feels like my nervous system is going to implode on itself, and that it's just going to lead to disastrous consequences physically and psychologically. So I need to do everything I can to really focus on this healing journey. And I really appreciate you all staying with me through this 33 minutes. We're going to be putting more of these videos out in a really low demand type of way. So thank you for following along and joining us on There and Back Again, the video series on the AuDHD journeys. Make sure to share this with someone who might need it. And I am looking forward to hearing about your healing journey as well. Doubt yourself, do it anyway.